Hey, this is the Double Negative Podcast, a photography podcast by Will Malone, with your host, me, the titular Will Malone. In this episode, I want to talk about the end of film photography. Is it over? Should it be? Are prices too high? Who knows? But first, you can follow me on Instagram at Will Malone. You can follow my Polaroid and instant film Instagram account at Everyday Instant. I post a new instant film photograph there every day. You can like this video and then subscribe to this YouTube channel if you're picking up what I'm putting down. Don't forget, we also have an audio-only version on your favorite podcast app, so you can listen to this on the go without having to look at my hideous face. Also, don't forget to sign up for the weekly newsletter, the Double Negative Dispatch, over on Substack. The link is in the description. Whether you're listening to it as a podcast or on YouTube, you can go to the description, subscribe to the newsletter. But the ultimate way to support this Double Negative project is to go to willmalone.com and order a print. I would be honored if you ordered a print of mine and hung it on your wall. It'd be amazing. Got some new stuff coming there very soon, but there's plenty to pick from right now. Okay, so now to the topic at hand. Film prices are crazy, right? So I've talked about this struggle I have many times, which is that I shoot a lot of Polaroid, shoot a lot of instant film, so I can't justify shooting roll film anymore, and it's just I just can't. It's ridiculous. It's absurd. There was one point during my Polaroid 365 project where I was shooting instant film. I had just spent $400 on a new batch of instant film, and then I was shooting film in just my Nikon FE or whatever, and I sent that off to the lab, sent some film I had to the lab, and it was like $80 to $100, and then I just bought $400 of Polaroid film, and I was just like, I can't do this anymore. This is not worth it, especially since I'm sending film off to a lab. And that's the thing. It's like I'm all for labs existing. I want labs to exist. I want film to exist. But I do feel like it's not sustainable. And like Kodak, Portra, like one of the most popular films, just keeps raising its prices. And if you're not developing it yourself, if you're not like a lover of that side of the process, then to me, I just think it kind of doesn't make sense to keep doing it. And I'm somebody who, like, to improve their photography skills, really has to shoot a high volume of photos. I got to shoot a lot of photos. I think anybody who wants to be better at photography needs to shoot a lot of photos. And I think film photography largely isn't great for that. And that includes Polaroid film. You know, it's hard for me to justify Polaroid film when people, you know, want to shoot it. It's like want to get into it. I say shoot Instax because it's hard to tell people, you know, you get 8 shots for $15. And I just feel like over the past, I don't know, the past couple years, like, you know, film photography has a lot of up and down since it fell out of as the mainstream way to take photos. And I think that we hit a peak maybe last year, and now we're kind of cresting. I know so many film photographers who are like, ooh, digital seems nice. I could take photos. Limitless, boundaryless. I just have to figure out how to shoot photos the way that at least can simulate film or the limits of film in some way, and a lot of people are finding ways to do that. I've found ways to do that, and I'm going to talk about that in a video probably next week or something. It's kind of why I like the Nikon ZF, the mirrorless Nikon camera, not only because it looks cool and it's got the cool brass dials and feels like a film camera, but because I've actually found interesting ways to shoot it to kind of limit it, kind of like even a Polaroid or a film camera. And I'm going to talk about that in a video next week for sure. But I also think that this cresting of film photography actually doesn't have everything to do with price. I think that a lot of people got into photography because of film. Like film photography and seeing people shoot film got people into photography. And so I think a lot of these people who a year or 2, 3 years, 4 years ago got into film photography, I think they're becoming just more advanced photographers. I think they are leaving beginner status. And I think what naturally happens when you kind of leave that beginner status is you quit being so attached to the how you're shooting and the what you're shooting. And I think you just naturally, as you get more advanced, have more of an interest in subject matter than you do the tools, right? I think work being distinct merely because it was shot on film is kind of unsatisfying after a while. I think it's unsatisfying to most people. I think most people don't care except for enthusiasts. I think being only interested in shooting on film because it's film targets a certain kind of enthusiast, and I think that's just a small target. And I think you kind of run out of eyeballs at a certain point if you want to get your work out there and share. Now, of course, like I would say the people who love the process of film and that's an important part of their work, that's a different story. But I think a lot of people are like me in that they shoot film and then send it to a lab. And that's kind of it. That, like, I don't care about developing. In fact, developing in my house is a pain in the butt, because not only is my house small, but like, you know, just in a normal home, you have to deal with dust and then scanning is a whole thing. It's just a pain in the butt. I'd rather send it off to a place that is more equipped to deal with that. But then, you know, I think like, well, if I just sat in Lightroom or Photoshop or whatever and just figured out a good workflow, like I could get a lot of the character that I get out of film out of digital. I think this collides with another thing that I'm seeing, which is dissatisfaction with kind of always appealing to enthusiasts. This week, I don't know what's going on with Threads this week, but it's just showing me stuff that just like I just don't care about. Like, maybe it's just the amount of content on Threads that's basically just complaining about social media, but there's a lot of people complaining, especially on YouTube, complaining about how, you know, they want to make videos about photography. They want to make videos about photo books or just their love of images specifically, because like I said, the more advanced you get, the more you're fascinated with the what as opposed to the how. But they're frustrated because the only the videos that make the bigger numbers are like gear videos. And so I try not to have many discussions with people online. And you know, discussions with people online can go one of two ways. It can either be encouraging and nice, which I usually like. If I talk to people, it's usually in DMs. It's more one-on-one. But every once in a while, I jump in, and then it ends up being this like pointless argument, because you never can get your full point across and no one can hear your tone. And so you end up just crossing wires. Like there's nothing productive about like a Threads discussion, right? I think the only discussion you can have is like a valuable discussion you can have is like a one-on-one in the DMs, but like in comments and Threads and stuff, no one knows where you're coming from, what your tone is, especially if you're a stranger. And so I regret, but like I was talking to somebody because they were complaining about how like they feel trapped in making YouTube videos because like they can only make gear videos, and they would love to make other kinds of videos, but gear videos are the only ones that give them enough numbers to make their living or whatever. It's such a limiting way to think, and it just kind of like drives me nuts when people are like complaining, first off, that they can make any money on YouTube, but also are saying like, I can only make one type of video. And so there's this weird thing in the photography world where you get more advanced, you want to talk about the what, and you want to talk less about the how. But there are just a lot of beginners who use YouTube to find information or find out what camera they can get or find out a tutorial of like how to do something, right? So you have this problem where, you know, the more advanced people probably aren't looking for gear videos and that kind of stuff. But there are just way less advanced people than there are beginners. So videos about cameras and gear are just a more mainstream thing. And videos about the weeds of photography itself and concepts and ideas, that's like a tinier enthusiast lane. It's like a way smaller target. So it happens to be is that if you have a serious interest in photography, there's just way less of you that exists. But if you're interested in cameras, there's way more of you, because, I mean, these companies wouldn't put all this R&D and money into making cameras if there wasn't like some sort of mainstream or large appeal to a camera. And a lot of people like cameras. Not a lot of people like photography. And so I think that when you do like photography videos, you're like limited to this thing where you think, well, the only way to get numbers, the only way to get that sweet ad revenue is by talking about gear. And it's a big difference numbers wise when I talk about a camera versus when I talk about, you know, probably this episode of this podcast, talk about ideas. But I think there is a solution to that. And I think that's the problem, is like everyone's trying too hard. Like it's limiting to think that there's only two things you can do as a photography YouTuber. And I think that's when we have to remember the what of our photography, meaning like what are the ideas we're interested in, and connect those with photography. I think that's a more satisfying way to do it. I'm not interested in cameras. Now, I do like to share when I'm trying to use a piece of gear to get where I'm going. I have no problem with making videos like that. Reviewing gear is a race to the bottom. Like reviewing cameras and gear and stuff it's a race to the bottom because it's obvious. Everyone knows that you can get better numbers by talking about a camera, so everyone does it. So there's not like new ground to be covered there. So I think the new ground is covered is when you marry your love of photography, photo books, enthusiasm for photography with ideas, with your other interests that may or may not be more mainstream. Like, I think there'd be a lot less stress in doing that. Now, it's hard because it may not work. And that's the other thing is I think we have to be focusing on like getting some emotional stability and being okay with not getting high numbers. And it's easy for me to say because I've been sharing stuff on the internet for years and years, and barely anyone's seen a lot of it. And so I've developed a thick skin that I'll put something out and just not care if no one else cares. I just do it. And so it's easy for me now because I'm used to not getting a lot of attention on social media. And so it's allowed me to hone and kind of figure out my voice and realize that when I relax and just talk about the stuff that I'm interested in, that's when it actually does better and is more maintainable for me. And so this is all, by the way, like I hate talking about like the meta aspect of what I'm doing. I think that once you start, unless your goal is to like have tutorials about making things, I think once you start to get to a place where you start talking about the making of how you're talking and like talking about making videos and all that stuff, I think it's like over. I think the ideas have run out. So I don't really want to, I don't like talking about like the inner workings of photography YouTube because it's like so niche and no one cares. But I just think we have to like, you can't work out of fear and you can't be afraid of like making flops. And obviously like we have bills to pay and whatever, but like, you know, if you're making YouTube videos, then you have to assume some level of risk. It's not like there's like a right way and a wrong way to do it. And if you're already doing it, then and you're looking for some sort of stability, you're like, I have bills to pay. I need stability. So I have to make gear videos. Then you're probably like, I don't know. It just seems like a weird place to be. And seems like you got to figure out some stuff. I don't know. Anyways, you got to be okay with making flops, I think. And that will help guide you to what you actually need to be making. Speaking of flops, but not really, I went to the movies the other day and saw something that speaks to all of this in a weird way. Okay, so I drove about an hour to get to this movie theater. I've never been to this movie theater before. Essentially, I'm here because it's the only place that The Brutalist is playing, and an IMAX no less. So I've really wanted to see The Brutalist. It's now nominated for like Best Picture or whatever. I'm wanting to see it, but it hasn't released wide until I guess now. But even so, I can't just go see it in my normal movie theater. Drove an hour. It is currently 12:15. Movie starts at 12:40. Got here a little early so I could get popcorn, make sure I got here on time. But the movie's 3.5 hours. 3.5 hours plus an intermission. So I'm gonna spend my whole day here, basically. Like, I'm meeting people for dinner tonight, and I'm basically gonna like be done with this movie and then go to dinner. So yeah. Anyways, I'm gonna go in there and go see The Brutalist. I'll let you know what I think when it's over. Love you. Okay, it's 4:45 in the afternoon. So I just lived a whole life inside The Brutalist. My thoughts on the movie? It was good. This movie is probably an American classic, I think. But the problem with it, I think, one of the biggest, I think my biggest issue with this movie is that it's been largely marketed to enthusiasts. So a super small target. There's been way more discourse about the making of this movie than the ideas in the movie itself. There's been way more discourse about the fact that it's filmed on VistaVision and it's shot on Kodak Vision 500T and 250D. And like, you can go for hours deep diving into how this movie was made and the nitty gritty and in the weeds thing. And that is a testament to the people who were in the theater yesterday, which I'm an enthusiast. The guy I was with, Matt Lewis, again, I always name drop him on the podcast, film photographer guy. And then at the bottom row, it was a stadium seating situation. So I was up here. There was a guy down here and I saw him typing his thoughts on the movie on Letterboxd, like on his phone. Like, so this was a theater full of enthusiasts. There was not like a normal grandpa or grandma in the theater. And that's a problem because I think this movie actually like has a lot to say to like Americans and the masses. I don't know. And I feel like it's getting buried because it has decided to take this route in the marketing of being for cinephiles and photographers and people who are just interested in the nitty gritty. And I think that just does it a disservice in a lot of ways. And I think there's some really interesting ideas in it that aren't getting talked about. And it has something interesting to say about the making of something, anything. So I will admit that like the movie is also speaking about the creation of the movie. So maybe it makes sense that we're just going to talk about that it's shot on film. I just think that's uninteresting to people. I think that tells people, oh, well, this movie's not for me then. And that's sad because I think it should probably make more money and I think it should be seen as like an American classic. It does have some rough stuff in there. There are a few rough scenes in there that keep me from recommending it to like, some older people in my life that might like it otherwise. But I'm only going to sit for 3.5 hours to experience a good story. Like, if I had to sit for 3.5 hours and just watch like indulgent vistas shot on film, like, I'm bored. I'm not going to do it. It's just not going to happen. I'm not that much of an enthusiast. And so I think the fact that I would be willing to sit for 3.5 hours, and then also it doesn't feel like 3.5 hours. That's how good it is. It moves. It keeps you engaged. Like it does not feel as long as it is. And at not one point was I bored. At no point was I bored. The movie at the same time is astoundingly beautiful, and I was in awe of the photography and just like some of the images in the movie. So it did appeal to me. Again, I'm an enthusiast, but I'm a minority of people, and marketing to just people like me, like it's a numbers game. You're just not going to get as many of us. But it has something to say. It really does. And I would say that it's kind of an artist versus everyone type of story, because I think the main story is basically trying to show this relationship of an artist, Adrian Brody, who is a brutalist architect. Brutalism, for those that don't know, is often that like oppressive sort of concrete. You often see it in like Russia and places where you just see the big square building that's just it seems devoid of form, only about function, but it's also about form in a weird way. Anyways, you know what I'm talking about. It's like the oppressive concrete, tyrannical looking buildings. And so he's an architect that is into brutalism. That's his niche, I guess. And then Guy Pearce plays like the rich benefactor that is paying him to design this project he once built in the middle of Pennsylvania in like a field. But it's not just about that. It's about how artists who have a vision outside of the mainstream are kind of rejected or questioned by literally everyone. There's one character that actually like that I think about probably more than the Guy Pearce character, who they take almost too far, the rich benefactor story. They take it almost too far into how abusive and horrible that relationship can be, that in that it's almost like cartoonishly bad. But there's this contractor that So Guy Pearce hires Adrian Brody to go design this Brutalist building in Pennsylvania. And he says, hey, I'm going to get one of my contractor guys to help you put this project together, partner with you. And this contractor guy, like, I feel like I've met this guy. Like, he's like just a regular working man, older guy. And he's looking at this project as like, why would we do it like this? You know, like, why does it have to look like this? Like, don't you want it to look good? You know, it's like, he can't understand why you would want to make art, why you would want to try to make anything not look the same as everything else. He's the guy that I've talked to that's like, well, I just don't understand your photos. Why are your photos so weird? I just don't get it. I just don't get what you're doing. Why can't you just like take landscapes? And it was like that guy like in the movie like triggered me because I feel like I just knew that guy. And so that's why I think this movie is so great, because it's like it's speaking to the whole artist experience. It's not just speaking to just artist plus rich benefactor. And I think that's why it's powerful, because it's chock full of different things the artist goes through. It also asks the question, like, how much do you have to compromise of yourself to create your vision, right? And that, I think, goes with everybody. I think movies often can take big swings in that regard and be like, okay, well, this artist like has this thing he wants to build and his life devolves. He becomes addicted to drugs, alcohol, blah, blah, blah. And I think that no matter who you are from an artistic perspective, you face some of this. Maybe you're not like getting addicted to drugs and like going down into the depths of rock bottom or whatever to create something. But I think we all have our compromises we have to make in order to make what we're after and to see what we're thinking come into the real world. And I think this movie does a really good job of talking about that idea. And I think it ties in super interestingly to something else I've been watching recently, which is a documentary series about the creation of RoboCop. And I'm spoiling my newsletter a little bit because I'm going to talk about this in my newsletter, but it's called RoboDoc. It's on Amazon Prime. And it's a series about the creation of RoboCop, which RoboCop, I like RoboCop. First off, I just want to say that I do like RoboCop, but it's kind of an absurd movie. Like it's a dark comedy. It's funny in all the wrong, twisted ways it could be funny. It's super gory, but it's like, I think, known to people as kind of ridiculous. And I think just even the name, and they talk about this in the documentary, is like they couldn't get a director because the name RoboCop sounds stupid to everybody. When they're putting this movie together, like the amount of manpower and hours and pain and suffering that people give years of their life to make RoboCop. And it seems so stupid. Like, you're doing all of this stuff. You're giving up hours. You're giving up sleep. You're giving up your health to make RoboCop. And that's something that the Brutalist talks to. The Brutalist talks to this idea is like, you're making a type of building and architecture that like Americans don't understand. And I think that this movie kind of calls out Americans for having very limited and bad taste overall, which I think is actually probably true. I think America is kind of like a jumbled mess of a lot of boring, practical, bad taste. There's like a kind of, you go to shopping areas, every town has like their shopping mall area, and that's like a kind of brutalism as well. So it's funny that brutalist architecture stood out as this thing that's like hideous to most people, and yet we like kind of create our own type of brutalism, which I think the movie kind of hints at. I don't know if the movie fully goes there, but I'm going there when talking about that. But it definitely is. It's a movie that I'm still chewing on. It's a movie that there's so much to think about, especially if you're somebody that's into all aspects of it. Or if you are an artist yourself, or if you're just into like movies, if you're a cinephile, if you care about what camera and lens combination and what film stock and how they push the film stock in certain areas to get some of the, shadows to have more noise in a marble mine or whatever. Like, I just watched a video that the cinematographer like goes into the weeds of how they shot this movie. And I'm just thinking like, I don't know. I feel like it's kind of a mistake to like. I think the filmmaker of this movie is a cinephile, which is why they're probably talking a lot about that, and it does give something to the passionate people who care about that stuff. I think I care about it. Like it's interesting to me. But I don't know. I think I'm caring about it less, like the how it was made. Like I'm not going to make a movie like The Brutalist. And I kind of, even if they shot it to look like film, but they shot it digitally, I think like I wouldn't care about that either necessarily. I care about it more than like my dad would, but at the same time, it's like, I think that maybe my thoughts aren't fully formed on this, but I do think that talking about film, photography, talking about shooting a movie on film, talking about format of film you use to shoot a movie or used in a photo you posted on Instagram, I think that is generally uninteresting to most people, and I think it limits where we can go. And I think The Brutalist is like a really good example of like, it's not going to make a lot of money. I don't think it is. It's not at all. First off, the release strategy has been super weird and limited, but I think people see 3.5 hour movie. Oh, well, it's shot on film. Well, yeah, that doesn't mean anything to me. Like, I just think that talking about how it's made is possibly keeping really good, interesting ideas and interesting work away from the people who should see it. It keeps it cloistered in this tiny world of enthusiasts that I think ultimately is a dissatisfying audience to appeal to, because we're so picky, and enthusiasts are just irritating. We're irritating. We talk about things that don't matter, and I think that's it. It doesn't matter if you shot a photo on film, and I think that it's sad to me that The Brutalist probably won't get mainstream appeal when it probably would 10, 20 years ago if this came out in theaters. Maybe it will. If it wins Best Picture at the Oscars, maybe it will get more mainstream appeal. But I think just talking about it as a cinephile's dream of, film and VistaVision and formats and lenses and stuff, I just think it's limiting. It limits the work. And I think that's what I'm saying in this whole episode. Boy, that was clunky. I even have notes that I wrote to kind of help guide me through this idea. And I still struggled, which probably shows how half-baked this podcast really is. And, I appreciate all of you that listen to this every week or watch it for its half-baked ideas. And watch me, struggle to get thoughts out. I have so many thoughts, struggle to get them out. Okay, but what's next? So I have had an epiphany. I talk about how I don't like talking about the work. We're almost done here, by the way. I don't like talking about the videos I'm making. But I had an epiphany. I want the podcast to stay the podcast. I like talking about ideas. I like just sitting here and just like waving my hands and talking about ideas. So that's going to continue. It's just a good outlet for me to get some stuff out. The second video of the week, the Wednesday videos that I do, to really differ from these. And so I want them to be more on the fly. I want them to be out and about. And I've made a lot of videos this month that I haven't posted. I've been just workshopping. I've been like playing around in the lab, just trying to figure out what I like, what I don't like. I've made some experimental ones. I've made some not good ones. I've made some overly scripted ones. And the other day I just picked up my camera. I had a thing I've been thinking about with Instax, and I was like, I'm just going to pick up my camera, go out and film myself just doing this idea. And it was probably the most fun I've had in a long time. It was the most fun I had making a video. I at no point got bored editing it, which I get bored editing video a lot, which is a testament to something I need to fix in my own videos. And I had fun shooting it. I had fun talking about it. And I think the final product is very fun, and I really enjoyed it. And not planned, not scripted. I just went out and did a thing. And I think it allowed a lot of openings for stuff I didn't predict, I didn't plan out, and I like that. very vloggy kind of. I don't know if I want to label it as that, but maybe it is. But yeah, so that's what we're doing. So we're doing podcasts and we're doing fun on the fly videos around work I want to talk about and do. So I'm really excited for you to see Wednesday's video, see what you think about it, because I thought it was a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun. And honestly, I think that's kind of all that matters. If I'm having fun, you're having fun. It's Kurt Russell theory. We all like Kurt Russell because he's visibly having fun on screen. And that's why we like him. And so that's how I try to make everything, is like, if you can feel I'm enjoying it, if you can feel I'm having fun, then it will be fun for you. And Wednesday's video was certainly very fun for me. I had fun making it, top to bottom. And I don't know what this is, this hand motion, top to bottom. I don't know. And we're going to just do that for the foreseeable future. Going to have some fun. Just going to go out there, just see what happens. And that's it. Thanks for watching. You can follow me on Instagram at Will Malone. You can follow my Polaroid and Instant Film Instagram at Everyday Instant. Make sure to like this video, subscribe to this channel if you're picking up what I'm putting down. Go to the Double Negative Dispatch on Substack. Go subscribe to that for my weekly newsletter. Go to willmalone.com and order a print if you are so inclined. I'd really appreciate it. And thanks for watching. I really appreciate you. And yeah, I will see you again very soon.